How's it going, everyone? I'm Brennan T. Adams. Welcome back to the Brennan T. Adams Show. And today I have a special guest, somebody who I am super excited to have on. He's become a really good friend. He's a family member to me. Really consider him family. A mentor. He's somebody I met back in Iowa. He came and spoke at my event in Iowa. And we've connected ever since. He's been a part of my TV show, Success in Your City. We've advised companies together, done masterminds, and have a lot of fun. And please help me welcome the guy that created Priceline.com, YouBid, and many others, Jeff Hoffman. Love you, buddy.
Today.
Oh, it's always good having a conversation with you, talking different things. So today I wanted to ask a couple different questions. Since we've been working together, I literally have heard every question. I know all the different stories. So I want to go in different directions. The first question I want to ask you is, why did you want to become an engineer? Why did you want to become a software engineer? Like, what was the drive behind that?
All right, so that's a good question because it's a lesson that I share. Like literally just before I came on here, I was back at the hotel talking to about 3,000 or 4,000 kids, students.
Yeah.
They were all in India, but they were students. And I was talking to them about the same advice that I got, which is everybody's first advice for your kids is to go get an education and some good degree and something that you could get a good job in and a good paycheck. So I didn't become an engineer because I stayed up at night dreaming about engineering stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the truth. The truth is I became an engineer because everybody said, if you get an engineering degree, you'll get a good job, you'll get a good salary at some good company, which is what we drive everybody to. We just leave out one thing. We never ask them if they want a good life. Because I had a good job and I had a good salary, I actually hated my job every day. So it wasn't engineering that I hated. I got that just to get the good job, but all I had was a job and a paycheck and a life that was not fulfilling for me. So that's why I chose engineering, because society said to do that, and I actually didn't enjoy it.
So when you left engineering, can you talk about the first endeavor you did go on, and what was the first 12 months of that endeavor, what it looked like?
Okay, so it's kind of a funny story because I'll tell you what the company was in a second, but my degree is software engineering. And I hired some software engineers, my first startup, my first company. We're sitting and writing code, and all of a sudden everybody stopped. I noticed no one else is writing code, and they're all staring at me. And I said, what's going on? And they all look at Robert, the rock star developer. And they look at him, and I said, Robert, what's going on? And he turned to me and he said, yeah, we're going to ask you to back away from the keyboard slowly. And I said, what is going on? And he said, you're like the worst developer ever. And I said, dude, it's my company. I hired you guys. And he said, and somehow you're still the worst developer ever. And I said, I have the same degree as you. And he said, and yet we learned this stuff. And apparently you didn't. So I did not know. When I was a corporate engineer, no one told me that. When I started engineering and we're focusing on building a rock star team, I found out that wasn't even the place for me to go. So the first company, very quickly, I was unemployed. I quit that corporate engineering job. And I quit it midstream because I just couldn't sit in that cubicle, gaze out the window, and think this is the whole rest of my life. And that's what it was going to be. In fact, there was a senior guy who was like my boss's boss who'd been at the company like 27 years. And one day he summoned me to his office, the big boss. And for no apparent reason other than I was bored, I counted the steps from my cubicle to his office.
You would do that.
And it was like 52 steps, and I walked into his office, and I said, in 27 years, you've moved 52 steps. I regretted saying that, but he's like, do you have a point? And I said, not really, even though I think I just made it. Yeah. But I was like, I couldn't do it. So I quit. I bought an airline ticket to go see somebody I thought was going to be a mentor. I went to the airport. It was really crowded on Friday. I stood in line for an hour because back then you had to wait in line to get a boarding pass, and I missed the flight. And while I was standing there, I was sitting and thinking, this is ridiculous that there's an hour-long line of humans to a lady that works for the airline so she can look at your ID and hit print and hand you a piece of paper, a boarding pass, and then hit print. And I was even saying to her, why are we all in line to watch you use the printer? And she's like, next. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This can't be. So I started my first company that Friday, which was when you go to an airport today, the check-in kiosks are actually airports all over the world now. That was my first product. But it was trial by fire. I was 20-something years old, unemployed, not a good engineer, building an engineering product and launching my first company without a dime. That's where it started. Luckily, it worked.
Well, thank you, because it makes life easier. I mean, who's obviously printed the ticket out at airports? Yes. So we all have been helped by Jeff Hoffman. This next question I have is, who's the most important business relationship you have or have had, and what did they teach you?
Well, that's a really good question. So there have been a couple. One of them was actually the first investor that I ever had for that company. I only wound up getting one investor, and he was the first investor ever. And interestingly enough, because people don't think of this, when people ask you advice you got and lessons you learned, we always talk about useful, positive advice. But I actually got something that was extremely valuable. I learned early on what I don't want to be like when I grow up. I had an investor that was so concerned with success and making money that he was willing to sacrifice everything. And in the end, while I watched him drive his wife away. She left him, and he seemed not to care. Then, I know this is rough. I'll bring us back up after this, but his son kept coming to me and saying, all my father cares about is being business, more money, more sales, more business. He doesn't care about me. And I kept telling his son, you need to just go have your own life then and let your father see who you are. He didn't do that. Instead, he put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger and left his father a note, said, all you care about is making more money and being business success and watching yourself on TV. And I was there through all that. And I made a note to self. I know a lot of people watching are focusing really hard on building their business and making money, but if that owns you, you are on the wrong path. And he taught me that. So even though it was a negative lesson, I learned early on to keep my eyes and ears open to making bad decisions, to focusing on the wrong things. That helped. The good mentor that I found, somebody I hunted down in the community, because I fundamentally believe a mentor isn't someone in your industry. A mentor is someone you want to be like when you grow up. That's how you should find a mentor.
Yeah.
Not because I'm in the airline industry and they're in the airline industry. It's someone you admire that you want to be like when you grow up. I found that person. His name was Roger. I hunted him down for months before I finally got a meeting. I got a meeting because he said, I'm at Starbucks anyway. I'll give you 10 minutes if you promise to never talk to me again the rest of your life. I took the 10 minutes, and 3 hours later, he had canceled all his other appointments, and he was my mentor. I learned so much from him about communicating, about dealing with people, about empathy. Many of the things that helped me succeed, not just in business and life, I learned from Roger. He was an extremely valuable mentor.
Who's somebody that's a mentor to you today, or somebody you go to when you have an obstacle?
Well, the good news is I have a lot, and I draw on them for different things, and some of them may not even know that they're role models or mentors for me. And they're, all different walks of life, right, and all different places. For example, unfortunately, I lost my father a couple of years, but my father was a big mentor because of his focus on treating every human being with sort of the same level of dignity and respect. Yeah. Whether it's the janitor in a building that I'm in or the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, my father wouldn't have talked to either of them any differently. And I make it a point to try to live that every single day. That was important to me. So when things were tough and I needed perspective, my father always had that calming perspective. Like I said, unfortunately, I lost him recently. But there are people in my life now that serve as role models for different reasons. I'll just give you a quick example. You know that one of my close friends and business partners now is Pitbull, the singer. Mm-hmm. This was a Cuban immigrant, barely spoke English, in the worst part of Miami, father in prison, mother with a drug problem, that instead of feeling sorry for himself, woke up every day and said, I'm going to focus only on what positive I can find out of this day. And today he's Mr. Worldwide. And so he and I will just reach out to each other randomly on the road just for kind of a quick hello or a quick I love you even. But what I draw from that as an example is when I'm having a really bad day or if I'm, whatever it is, just struggling against something, some days I'm talking to him and I think, wait a minute, I don't even know what struggle is. Yeah. And I look at what my buddy went through and never once did he turn to the negative, right? He always said, I'll just focus on the positive and keep going forward. So you have people in your life that if you think about it, you draw something different from each of those people. when you need that thing. And hopefully I do the same thing in return, that hopefully there's people that count on me for certain things that I'm able to deliver. But I like having a mix of people in my life, because at different times you need different things.
So I love this. One of the things that every mentor I have, like you're a mentor to me, I pick up one thing that I really want to take away and learn from. For you, I've learned the power of storytelling. You're the best at telling stories. I'm curious, for you and Pitbull, what's one thing you've taken away from him that gave you a different perspective on things just working with him?
Oh, it's funny that you say that, because the storytelling thing, he and I were doing on television together. We were doing this grant program during COVID, right, to just giving money to small business owners around the country so they could stay alive. Not loans, not government money. We were just giving out cash to keep people alive. We were filming TV commercials together on all the major networks to do that. And I was sitting beside him, and I was explaining something, and he summarized it really quickly. And I turned and gave him that look, and he said, "Hey, I'm a lyricist." And I said, "Okay, fair enough. It's your job to summarize things." But the reporter said to him, it was interesting, the news person said to him, "You're a rapper, aren't you?" And he said, "No, I'm a reporter." And I thought that was interesting, that he doesn't call himself a rapper, he calls himself a reporter, because he said, "I'm just describing what I see out there." And so his version of storytelling is a song. But it made me think that what you just said, that my job is really to be a reporter. I've been blessed in that, as chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, we're in 190 countries. So I get to travel around the world and observe the world, which is a privilege and a blessing. But when I come back, I like to share that. And I realize the lesson that I learned from him is just be a good reporter. So the way I tend to speak, as you know, is I tend to tell stories of just what really happened where I was. The actual story is more powerful than any PowerPoint
100%.
I'm going to put together.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something I observed that he does that makes his music accessible to people, and that's the way I try to do when I speak.
So given you've traveled all over the world, what do you see all the entrepreneurs you worked with, from startup to 7, 8, 9 figures? What's the key, like one or two things that people, the mistake they make as entrepreneurs that holds them back?
Yeah, so here's the good news, by the way. The good news is we're all the same.
Yeah.
Race, religion, gender, ethnicity, age, none of it matters. I deal every morning. I usually start the day on WhatsApp mentoring entrepreneurs from, on any given day, there's 20 different countries I'm talking to. So again, it's a blessing that we do what we do in 190 different countries, but there's a big realization that I wish more people would figure out. We're all just the same. Everybody's just trying to get along, take care of their family, do the best they can for the people they love, right? We're all exactly the same, even though it doesn't appear that way in the media version of it. And wait, what was the question? What'd you ask me?
I asked you, what did I ask him? Yeah,
Oh,
what holds
okay.
entrepreneurs? Thank you, Tim.
The inability to make a point when someone asks them a question is the big. Just kidding. What holds most people back is not realizing that you can't do it yourself.
Yeah.
You are never as smart as you think you are. You are not as brilliant as everyone around you is telling. Quit looking at yourself on the camera or on the screen and thinking, "Wow, look at me." That is the mistake entrepreneurs make, is they wind up being blinded by their own brilliance. Nobody that's ever done anything amazing did so by themselves. The most amazing feats ever in human history or in business were done by people that were smart enough to surround themselves with people smarter than them.
Yeah.
So that's the mistake people make. And you know what harms entrepreneurs a lot? Success. When you start doing well, you start thinking, "I must be pretty good at this stuff. Look at me." That's the biggest mistake you can make, because you know what happens then? You stop listening and you stop learning because you think you know something.
Ego gets to you.
Ego is the biggest mistake. The most successful entrepreneurs in the world, and I've been lucky enough to become friends with some of my heroes, that's the common element I see among them, is they never are blinded by their own brilliance. They never think they know everything. They look at every day and every person as an opportunity to grow. No matter how successful they are, they never stand back and say, "Look at me." They say, "Look at her. Maybe I can learn something from her. I'm going to walk over and talk to her."
I like Bill saying it. I always like to be the underdog, because the second you think you're cool shit is when it takes you down. So I'm going to open up here in a minute. I have another question for Jeff. If you guys have a question, please in the back, Samantha or Rachel, if you could bring the mic up. We'll do the questions here in a minute. But my next question for you is, we always talk about explosive growth and growing companies. I mean, you've been a part of Priceline.com, UBid, Booking.com, and many other companies, grown them to over $1 billion. What does it take to actually build a 9-10-figure company?
So one we just talked about, which is dedicating a part of your time to not running the company, but to getting out of the office and finding rock stars smarter than you to run it for you.
Yeah.
That is a big part of it. Too many people are so busy running the company all day. I would schedule times, I call them talent hunting days, where I would leave to go find rock stars that are smarter than me and get out of their way and let them run the company. That is step one, that until you can trust and empower people smarter than you, you will never grow. People call me all the time and say, we seem to have hit a plateau. I was like, right, because you're still running everything. I don't care if you still call yourself CEO, but you need to trust and empower people smarter than you. So that's step one of what it takes to scale is team. One of the other ones, by the way, is brand, right? You have to focus on building a brand. You've got to get known in the universe in an exponential way. Marketing is linear. You spend money to increase traffic, to increase sales. That's linear. Brand is exponential. When you spend time crafting a brand for yourself and for your business, people in the world that you spent $0 marketing start hearing about you, and they start coming to you unsolicited. That's the way that you achieve massive scale, is by creating a brand that lives out there in the world, that drives inbound traffic to you that you spent no money marketing. Those are probably two of the top things that you have got to get right. There's about 7, but there's a couple of them to get us started.
All right, so I'm going to open up to questions here. Raise your hand if you have a question. I know back there, Todd, you had a question. Can you give the mic to Todd?
Oh, hi, thanks. Hey, so going back to the ego comment that you made, it sounds to me, so many people have it, a lot of it's human nature, right? Success breeds confidence. More success breeds more confidence. What do the entrepreneurs who don't fall into that trap of the ego, is it just a mindset? Is it something they purposely set up to stop that cascade of becoming, I'm the expert now, I don't need to hear from other people?
So I think it's a couple of things. First of all, it is mindset. It's making the decision. It's looking in the mirror and saying, okay, today I'm going to learn something new from someone else because there's way more that I don't know than I do know. It's a decision. It's a mindset for you to say, even when people are fawning over you or telling you you're great, it's for you to go back home, find what grounds you. By the way, if you need something to really ground you, have a kid, because you can have the best day in the world. And I actually got an award in the White House, and I came home and my daughter said, "You wore that today?" That was a great way I said, "That's all you have to say." And she said, "Whatever you did today, I can't believe you wore that." I was like, "I got an award." She said, "Not interested." Now, anyway, be around the people that ground you. Make a conscious decision to be open. So it is a mindset very much, but I think a big piece of it has to do with who you surround yourself with, right? I know people that I respect their success, but I don't hang out with them. As soon as the meeting's over, I'm done, because they don't represent what we just talked about. I know people, I respect their success, but their ego is such that they're not heroes to me, and I don't want to be around them because I don't grow and I don't learn from them. I make it a point to find the people to be around that I constantly learn from and constantly grow, and I put myself in those situations. A lot of times, events that I go speak at, I am not a speaker for a living. I've just been a crappy engineer who built stuff my whole life. I've been a CEO my whole life. So sometimes I go speak, and people say to me, "Why are you here? Why did you come to our event?" And the answer is because I don't learn anything sitting at home on the couch. I might meet somebody at lunch today that will teach me something that I'll be really damn glad I learned tomorrow, and that never would have happened if I didn't put myself around people that I could learn from. It's an attitude.
That's good. I like that. Jay, what's your question, my friend?
First of all, Jeff, thank you for being here. It's great to see you. So there's lots of people that will see social injustice, that will see issues out in our communities around the world, that just see them but don't do anything about it, that don't take action. And the shift that we've seen you make in creating an amazing legacy beyond the business, but using your resources, using your abilities to connect with people, to look for solutions is quite remarkable. So I'd like to touch on that for a moment. You shared a story with me recently about your mother when you were young, and there was an injustice against another woman that your mother saw, and she spoke up in that instance. Do you recall that story?
Yeah. It really made me think. So I'll just tell it very quickly because we had stopped at a little convenience store, and there was a very large woman walking with her child who was crying, and she suddenly got frustrated enough that she turned around and basically punched the child in the back of the head as hard as she could, so hard that the kid went tumbling. And everybody, was shocked in the store, and everybody just scurried away. My mom, who was extremely tiny, said to me, "Hang on a minute," and made a U-turn and went right up to this very large woman and confronted her. And I was watching, all these men in the store did nothing. All these people her size, my little tiny mom's the only one who went up there and said to this woman, no, you ain't doing that again. And the woman turned and said, "Mind your own effing business." And my mother said, "You can't strike a child in the back of the head. You can't strike a child in the head at all." And she said, "It's my child and I'll do what I want." And my mother was standing between her and her child and saying, "No, I'm not going to let you do that again." And the woman said, "I'm about to do the same thing to you," basically. And before I moved, I was curious to see. I gave my mom 1 second. I wasn't going to wait too long. She did not take one step backwards. My mom's attitude was if you're going to touch that child, you're going to go through me. But meanwhile, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to call Child Protective Services, and I'm going to get that child another home. And that is what the woman responded to. A fight is one thing, but she knew that she'd lost. And my mother shook her head. And when the woman made a fist, I got up out of the car. I had just come from my high school football practice, and I stepped up behind my mom, and the woman did back down. But my mother said to her, "You don't deserve to have a child, and I'm having it taken away." And it turns out my mom didn't want to do that. She was bluffing. Cut to the chase, by the time it was over, they were both crying. My mom was hugging this woman and getting her help for her anger management issues and help for dealing with her child. When I got back in the car, I was stunned. And I said, "Mom, every other person just drove away." And I said, "Why you?" And she said, "Son, what kind of world it would be if everybody just walked away, if everybody just left that child there and did nothing about it?" She said, "I don't want to live in that world." And I made the decision right then. I said, "I'm not going to live in a world like that either." But she was my absolute hero. She is my absolute hero.
Wow.
Impactful. Thank you for sharing.
That's powerful.
Hi, Jeff. I was part of the mastermind last year from November to January. I think I said that last night. But what programs do you currently have with the Global Entrepreneurship Program right now?
Well, so very quickly, I am part of three things. Brandon can tell you about what we do at Jeff Hoffman Advisory, our programs and masterminds. I think they're on the table on the desk there. Yeah. But at Global Entrepreneurship Network, it's a nonprofit. That I'm the chairman of. We have a simple mission to help anybody, anywhere that wants to achieve economic independence by starting their own business to be able to do that. For example, I work with women in every Muslim country in the places where they can't get jobs. We just teach them how to start a company at home online so they can gain economic independence. This is what we do in 190 different countries. We help build the ecosystems around entrepreneurs. That's what Global Entrepreneurship Network does. We have all kinds of training programs, research programs, master classes. So that's what that organization does. We also have created something called the Global Business Angels Network, where we have networked business angels all over the planet Earth to fund those people. I do want to mention I have another organization that I'm also a partner in, the founding board member, called the Unreasonable Group. Unreasonable, we started as a nonprofit to do the same thing, but just to fund social entrepreneurship. At Unreasonable, we fundamentally believe this. Entrepreneurs are the people that will solve the world's biggest problems, not governments, not big companies. Entrepreneurs, you guys will solve the world's biggest problems. In fact, if you look at our website, It says BFPs, the world's biggest effing problems, is what our website actually says, because that's what we say every day there. So what we do there is our team goes out around the world and finds the entrepreneurs that are solving the world's biggest problems, aligned with the United Nations 17 goals for a better world, feeding people clean drinking water, education, healthcare. When we find those entrepreneurs, we bring them into the portfolio. We invest in these companies. More importantly, we mentor them. We stay with them their whole lives to help them grow. Today, and I'm actually happy to close on this note because I'm proud of our team, there's over 300 companies in the portfolio. They have generated, we've converted them from non-profits to for-profits so they can scale. They're all social entrepreneurship. They're all solving real problems in the world. They have generated over $6 billion in real revenues today. But these are the numbers I'm really proud of. Out of our portfolio of companies around the world, we have collectively, they have raised $7.2 billion that we've gotten in the hands of entrepreneurs changing the world. That's how much funding we've been able to deliver to social entrepreneurs around the world. And we were able to add this up. We have positively impacted 720 million lives and families in the world. We got recognized by the United Nations for that. We've got them off-grid electricity. We've got them drinking water. We've got them food. We've got them shelter, education throughout this network. So I'm telling you that because either of those organizations, if anybody listening wants to be involved, we'll take all the help we can get because the world needs all the help it can get.
Let's give a round of applause for that. So my last question for you, I could literally sit here for 5 hours. My question to you, and so you were executive producer, a part of Success in Your City, recently got nominated for an Emmy, which is really exciting. I want to hear from you. So you got to see the journey with us doing the show and really on this mission on finding what success was. What does success mean to you today in your life?
So first of all, congratulations again. And when you first reach out to me and to Kevin Harrington, I think Kevin and I felt the same way, that you and Samantha were pouring your entire heart and soul into creating a project that would help people understand and redefine success for this generation. So I hope it's okay that I'm speaking for Kevin too, but we loved your passion for the project and your whatever it takes. I want to make this work that you and Sam put into it. So the Emmys that were already won for you and Sean and the team, congratulations, and for whatever these new nominations, congrats as well. This is what happens when your passion is as strong as your work ethic, and the fact that you reached out to Kevin and I and said we could use some advice on how to do this. So it's really easy for me. Success for me for the rest of my life is watching people like you succeed. I receive more than my share of blessings in this world. I've already lived a life I never dreamed I was going to live and made money that I never needed. So now my joy comes from the ripple effect. There are people in this room that I mentor today, like yourself, that as you guys rise and as you guys achieve your success, and most importantly, as you use your success, for example, you personally have already made donations to help build the orphanage that I was building in Uganda. You have personally donated to that. The more you use your success to make other people's lives better, I consider that the most important reward I can ever get. So it's easy for me. I want to see people like you go out, kick butt, do well, be successful, and use that to make other people's lives better. That's end game for me.
Thank you. Thank you for today. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thanks, buddy.